So let's talk about the 6566 Mustang and why it makes such a good car to play around in and drive cross country from Chicago to Santa Monica on Route 66. So if we look at the history of the Mustang, everybody knows it was released in 1964 at the World's Fair in New York and big splash. We had production start in 64 and a half as a 65 car, but mid-year intro, and 121,000 sold in the first several months. The 65 model year came out in September of 64, and in that model year 559,000 sold, and then in 66 607,000 sold. So a 3-year or 2.5-year production run of almost 1.3 million cars, which is just a phenomenal volume. I don't think it's ever been equal or even come close. But then the sales dropped off. 67 to 68, the car got a little bigger, a little heavier, and first year wasn't too bad, 472,000, and then 317,000 in 68. 69, it dropped off a little bit. Car got a little longer, a little wider. I think that's my favorite. Well, I know it's my favorite body style, but I think the little bit bigger car was starting to turn some people off, and that sales that first year of that body style, 299,000. 900 or 824, so just under 300,000. 70, it dropped off below 200,000, and then 71, 72, 73, really basically, the sales fell out for that style. And then surprisingly, they came out with the Mustang 2 in 1974, which is, as Mustang fanatics will tell you, just a horrid little car, but sales spiked up to 385,000 in 74. And then they dropped off 188,000, 187, 133, 192 for the rest of its model run. So, but despite it being a horrid car, it sold well. Well, if you look at that, now I'm not saying this Mustang 2 is a great car. I think it's terrible, and I think most Mustang fanatics think that same way. But why did it sell so well? Well, it's got a lot in common visually with the original Mustang. Small, compact, kind of cute, something that you can play around in and have some fun with. Whereas as the Mustang progressed through its original, what they call first generation, but really 4 different body styles, from the original 64, 65, 66, great seller. 67, 68, a little bigger, sales drop. 69, 70 gets a little bigger again, sales drop. The 71 through 73, even longer again, and sales start dropping radically. They go up substantially for the Mustang 2, even though it wasn't a very good car. They had quality problems with it. That was when the big oil embargo was coming in. And in addition to that, we had emission standards, so they throttled that 302 engine down to, what was 150 horsepower or something like that out of a 5-liter V8. Just sacrilege. And I think the formula that made the original successful is why it's such a good car for the enthusiasts in the aftermarket, in the classic car industry, if you want to call it that. It's still a simple car. You can work on it fairly simply. If you want to have it for a concourse quality show car, you can restore it to original condition and it looks great. If you want to modify it and tweak it up a little bit, throw some mods on it, throw some headers, some an intake and a 4-barrel carb, and a fancy air cleaner to make it look a little sporty, you can do that easily. And now you've got a customized car. You can throw different wheel combinations and tire combinations on it. You can modify, jack it up. You can do this to it, springs, shocks, things that you can do to change its behavior. You can go and make it an all-out track car, and in fact, there's enough aftermarket parts that you can make it quite a fun performer. And in fact, if you look at what the original Shelby GT350 did, not bad on the track. So there's a lot of things you can do to the car today that make it a fun car to own and drive. And I like just the pure, simple pleasure of driving it and working on it. You can open the hood, you can change the spark plugs easily. If you even need to pull the engine out, that's not that hard to do. You disconnect the exhaust system, you disconnect the drive shaft, undo a couple of transmission bolts, engine mounts, disconnect the wiring harness, and you can yank the engine out. And if you want to rebuild it or put it in a 351 Windsor, there's room for that as well. So there's a lot of options, a lot of capabilities. If you want to play with it and put on an aftermarket ignition system, or even put in an aftermarket electronic fuel injection to it, you can modify that easily. It's basically dirt simple. There's not a lot to the wiring harness. There's not a lot that goes wrong, and you can just simply drive the car. They're fairly durable. They're fairly dependable. That 289 is practically bulletproof, unless you're going to go crazy, and then if you're going to do serious racing, whether it's drag racing or road racing, obviously you want to upgrade your engine components. But what made it great, I think, back then is still what makes it great today. It's fun, it's enjoyable to drive, but for the sheer joy of driving and having fun, I don't think you can beat it. So that's why I think a 66 Mustang is a great choice for going cross country from Chicago to Santa Monica on Route 66.